European LCS.
저희가 그걸 꼭 깨고 싶었는데 아쉬웠어요 많이.
They've matched their record from spring 2013, 9 games undefeated. This is number 10. Fnatic are onto the Nexus, and they set a new European winning streak record, going 10-0 in summer. The first team ever to do it.
I'm glad that we break our winning streak this time.
Of course, the fact that we're able to beat all the teams pretty significantly feels great for all of us. It kind of feels like we're a bit further ahead than everyone else.
It's going to make us even stronger.
Welcome to the European League Championship Series, broadcasting live around the world from our studio in Berlin, Germany. The action is heating up along with the competition. Out the disco lights are on, everyone's ready to party. As you can see, our awesome graffiti wall for the people just about above the entrance as they were enjoying the fantastic Berlin weather. There we see a couple of fans interacting with SK Gaming before the show, tending to their fans before diving into the action there. The Copenhagen Wolves freeze. Seems like he got a haircut, actually. Entering the building, setting up for their first game of the day against Gambit Gaming. Betsy there looking for his way on the stage. You'd think he'd know it by now, but he knows where to sit all right. I'm Evie Schogeseporter at the helm of the analyst desk alongside James Stress O'Leary and Mitch Grepo Voorspoels as we embark on week 6 of the summer split. The fans are definitely hyped to go, and we're starting to see the standings spread out as teams play each other for the second time this summer. And at the top of the tables, things are unchanged, but not completely. Fnatic is still up there with their winning streak. Origin, though, is in second place now in lieu of H2K.
Yeah, Origin jump up above H2K, and a lot of it was to do with H2K having a rough week last week. We'll get into that a little bit later when we talk about H2K, but a really rough showing with that 0-2 week. First time in a very long time for them. Yeah,
quite a rough week. On the other hand, Elements and Roccat, fantastic week. First 2-0 for those teams.
Yeah, both teams going 2-0, and especially for Roccat, this must feel great. With the resurgence of Steve as a top laner almost, he took off that tank mantle and he started playing more of these split pushes. 2 games, I believe, he played Echo, and he has had a really good performance. And in addition to that, not only Roccat, Elements had a good performance too, and this kind of makes it very interesting for me to see how that bottom of the table will start playing out as we see these teams play against each other right now. And we may finally see a little separation of that bottom 7, maybe divide in like an actually top 5, bottom 5, or just see who comes out on top, because the race for playoffs is slowly starting.
Definitely, and maybe the golden age is finally here for Roccat. They're playing SK and Gambit this week, so definitely a chance for a win there. Elements, though, versus H2K and OG. If they want to make something happen, they're going to have to do their darndest. And they have a lot to play with, though, because patch 5.12 goes live here in the tournament realm also today. So let's take a look at the changes, starting with the jungle. Runeglaive there in lieu of the Magus enchantment, but we've seen it a lot outside of the jungle if we've been watching the game.
Yeah, there was a lot of discussion on social media when it comes to where Runeglaive is going to appear. And the place that people have been talking about is Ezreal, in the middle lane, actually. A very weird one, AP Ezreal mid lane. We've heard it talked about a lot, but we actually didn't see it in the European Challenger Series yet this week. So it's on our radar, but maybe not a first pick.
Maybe in the LCS, and a couple of nerfs there for Ryze coming in, as he's been very popular here the last couple of weeks. Not that much, though. We'll see what happens. And Echo as well. We've seen him top, we've seen him mid, we've seen him jungle, but he's also been shut down.
Yeah, a couple of these popular picks right now being hit a little bit by the nerf pad, ever so slightly, and additionally, also Gragas has been nerfed, and he's on his way down from that tier 1 jungle position, but I don't think he will fall anytime soon, because he and Rek'Sai are all the way up there as tier 1 junglers, and the only question I have is Rek'Sai going to emerge as the predominant, like, single tier 1 jungler this week? I'm not quite sure, but I imagine people will keep trading Rek'Sai and Gragas.
We will see our final changes in the defensive masteries. It is concerning defensive bonus, armor, and MR. They weren't that popular defensive masteries to begin with. I doubt this will be a big surge in popularity, but we have been wrong before, and very wrong at that, so we will see. And with the nerfs hitting a lot of the top tier picks here in Europe, we wanted to step back and look at how the meta will continue to shift with 5.12 with our teacher Crepo.
Teacher Crepo. Okay, no, but we're in week 6 right now over in the European LCS, and it's always a good point to reflect and see how the meta has changed. And the first thing that sprung to mind for me was Maokai. We saw him a lot at the end of last season. We saw him a lot at the start of this season. But if we see on what's on your screen right now, he was picked 13 times week 1 and 2, but only 3 times weeks 3 and 5. And one of those times was only, you know, by the top 3 teams. In total, he's been picked 15 times by the lower tier teams. So he's kind of fallen off. A lot of these top teams have been switching over to more damage-oriented top laners, facilitating that triple threat composition we saw back last week.
Yeah, we were talking about that a lot as our keys to the top teams. We've seen a lot now of this triple threat style, 3 carries on the team with, you know, the likes of Echo, the likes of Rumble coming in that top lane as well, just to provide another damage threat.
Yeah, you have Ryze, Rumble coming out of there, and this is the most recent meta shift router is Poke, and that's what I want to touch on too. You have all that magic damage users mentioned, and the new Poke champions that are coming out. In addition to the old Kog'Maw, we now have the Varus in the mid lane, the Jace in the mid lane. Combined 9 picks in week 5, 7 wins, 2 losses. So Poke is on the rise right now, and everybody wants to play it. And they add a little extra damage in the top lane for that, facilitating those AP top laners, maybe a Corki in the bottom. But then you need something to tie that all together, the glue that sticks it all together, and that is Janna. We saw her barely picked in the first 4 weeks. That is 40 games. She was only picked 4 times. But in last week, 10 games, she was picked 7 times, out of which she won 6. So incredibly high win rate, incredibly high pick rate, most pick support, and she gets picked so often because she offers the disengage, which is so crucial for this Poke composition. And if we sum it all together, if we go for a quick TLDR, is this week we'll see a lot of Poke. We see more AD damage coming out in the likes of Varus and Jace. But we have the Janna for disengage. Now my questions are people going to start banning out this Janna? Or will we finally see the resurgence of hard engage, traditionally has been the counter to Poke?
Yeah, we will see. Well, thank you very much for that. We heard from Krepo where he thinks the meta game is going. He couldn't keep it to 140 characters or less. But we're going to ask you to do it, though. Tweet at LL Esports and let us know, how do you think teams should adapt to patch 5.12 and why? Trust.
It's an interesting one because I had the fortunate opportunity to watch 6 games of 5.12 with Challenger Series. We saw a mixed bag, a lot of split pushing coming out alongside that. So that's one thing that's on our radar, but I think that's a lot more to do with the Challenger Series kind of player champion pools more than anything.
Well, we will see what comes out here, but remember to send your responses about the meta changes at LL Esports, and don't forget that hashtag LCS. And now we'll see how all that plays out today as we kick off week 6 with a match between Gambit and the Copenhagen Wolves. We have Fnatic who's going to take on the Giants in game 3, Rock at SK, and our game of the week, the Unicorns of Love versus OG. That'll be game 4 here today. Very exciting. The UOL definitely need a win after a last couple of shaky weeks, and OG looking in form as ever. But for now, to get into our very first game of the day, we're going to check in with Pyrotechnics, who's on stage for an inside look at Gambit Gaming.
Thank you very much, Shocks. I am standing here with Gambit's Sean. Oh, not quite ready yet. All right, thank you very much, Shocks. I'm standing next to Gambit's Sean's. I believe we spoke a couple of weeks ago, and I wanted to follow up a little bit because when I last talked to you, I asked what it was like to be a coach standing here now. You're 6 weeks in. What's changed in your mind?
We had good training so far in the training sessions, and we had like a middle ground result, I would say, because we won against teams like Elements, and I think and SK, it was the goal to win against those, and then we didn't manage to go one step ahead, beating like Fnatic, H2K, and Oregon. So I'm still a bit sad about those games, but I still think that we have a lot of potential to beat this team later on.
Later on in the split, there's always still plenty of time, even though it is 6 weeks down the line. I did want to ask you about some of those recent results, too. You had some tough weeks, but you haven't managed to find wins since that 3-game streak you had a few weeks ago. What is your plan, or rather, what is your goal for Gambit at the end of this split? Where do you see them placing?
First of all, I think that the main goal is to be in playoffs, no matter what, but we aim for like 1st and 2nd place. But now that we lost a bit to Fnatic, Oregon, and Unicorn, like it's gonna be harder. So I just want us to be like the most prepared possible to come into the playoff. And it would be a huge disappointment if we are not in the first 6th place. But I'm pretty sure that we will be like at least 5 or 4 into the end of this split because we are doing really well so far into the scrims, and we were the team that did the most trouble to Fnatic, I guess. And they just are super good as a team, and so. Basically, yeah, we just want to be prepared for playoff and to be the best at the end of the split because it's what matters in the end.
Absolutely. You know, it's nice that you give some respect to a lot of these other teams, also being very confident. So that sounds like you've got the right mentality for it. So all said and done, thank you very much. You can go ahead and join your team, Sean's. And as we send it off to start this game off and this week off, we're going to hear, of course, what Gosu Pepper has to say about this week's matchups and why they're a must-win.
losing to teams like H2K, Fnatic, Origin, like what is top 3 kinda, it's acceptable because we learn a lot from it, but winning of course is better, like but losing to teams like Wolves, Giants, winning Course of Love, and others is like, it's not acceptable at all, because if you lose them, most likely you're gonna be out of playoffs, or you're gonna just get the 6th place or 5th. It's really, you're gonna be really close, so winning those teams is really, really important.
Not acceptable, according to Gosu Pepper. I'm Quickshot, joined by Krepos. We're going to take a look at these two teams who do find themselves in a little bit of a crossroads. Gambit Gaming currently not in the running for playoffs, taking on the Copenhagen Wolves, who are currently in that auto-relegation spot. Let's quickly look at the rosters before we talk about the game. It is, of course, Gambit, who are going to be on the blue side. They lost both of their matches last week to Origin and Fnatic. Kabashar, Diamond, Betsy, Forgiven, Gosu Pepper, and the man we just heard from, Sean's. Over on the other side of the rift is a team that is in flux. The Copenhagen Wolves have made some changes. Let's start with who's returning. Shook, Soren, Freeze, and Dentist. Longtime captain and top laner, Young Buck, is out. Lenny has joined, and they've got a new support player. Both of these guys from Belgium.
Yeah, just we cast. So if you're a struggling team in the LCS and you're looking for some raw talent, some untapped powers in Belgium, kids. So let's see how these guys perform. We've seen phenomenal performances from Belgian players in the LCS. Okay, let's not kid ourselves. I hope these guys do better than I did.
Well, we'll have to find out. Unfortunately, just as an update, Copenhagen Wolves will be losing 2 bans today because of the team's failure to meet the deadline for submitting the roster changes and the paperwork. So keep that in mind as we get to pick some bans. And let's talk a little bit about the players, about the matchup at hand. Diamond Prox is somebody that we've been looking at all week long, Crepo. And not only Diamond, we've been looking at the entire league. And who has the highest kill participation in the first 15 minutes? In the top 10, 9 of them are junglers. If you look down the list, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Who's missing?
5th spot is actually Oduwamne, who features in the top 10.
So yeah, the top 10 gets rounded out by 9 junglers, and then Oduwamne in there, but then you want to look for the 10th jungler. Where is he? Diamond Fox, and he's all the way at the bottom, ranked 37 in terms of kill participation, and this indicates a bit of a problem for Gambit. You would think a jungler with low kill participation would mean that the other lanes are just solo killing their opponents left, right, and center, but that's really not happening for Gambit either, so they're still struggling right now. And however, this could be the match to fix that because they're playing a weak opponent on paper, Copenhagen with roster changes, not too much practice. They're losing 2 bans, so this could be a prime opportunity for Gambit to continue that race to playoffs like Gosu Pepper was talking about.
Exactly. Unacceptable to lose to teams who are not Fnatic, H2K, and Origin. So let's see if Gambit can keep up their strong streak. They put up a pretty good fight last week against Fnatic. And a reminder, this is patch 5.12. There have been some changes. Crepo, you had a great teacher Crepo lesson earlier.
Or a bit of a rant.
Sivir still have to be up top, but Forgiven still not playing Kalista.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the weaknesses for Gambit Gaming, having to ban out, first ban Kalista. It's such a welcoming ban for the Copenhagen Wolves because they must worry about this champion a lot, and they just say, okay, well, Gambit's going to get rid of it, and I don't think a top-tier team should do that at this point in the meta game.
So we'll find out. What these teams have to decide is high priority. Gragas, some small changes. Rek'Sai available. We know Diamond has been, I think, leaning more towards Nidalee in recent weeks.
Less so last week, though, and gets rid of it himself. They might actually try and pincer the jungle. Perhaps we see a Gragas ban in the first rotation. Rek'Sai come out from Gambit. However, that would mean they would leave Draven open, something not all the teams have done so far with varying success. Draven has been shut down on Freeze 1 time, I believe, but other than that, he's been performing pretty well. 1 win, 1 loss in the 2 games. It's been banned 7 other times, so only 1 available opportunity did the Wolves not take that Draven. And for Freeze, he's got a new support. Jesui Cast now. We need to see how much synergy they've developed and grown in the week, and we do see Draven for the 8th time in 11 games being banned out. Now, Freeze as a player is very easy to lane with. He has a very distinct laning style, which is slightly towards the aggressive side, and same way with Forgiven, how he's quite predictable in his laning. So Cass obviously played a lot against these players in Challenger because he's a high-ranked support player over the European server. However, translating from solo queue to competitive play right now is so tricky because as the meta progresses and as people get better at League of Legends, laning phase matters less and less and less and less, whereas in solo queue it still matters the same amount. And we see that approach here from Gambit Gaming too with that Sivir pickup. You don't pick Sivir for lane. Forgiven no longer is that AD carry that wants to 1-3-1 with SK Gaming and get those towers down. No, he just picks Sivir for the utility, and I'm glad at least he's expanding his champion pool. Yeah, champion we didn't see from him in spring at all. This will be now the 3rd time in summer. Yep. For Copenhagen Wolves, they've got a lot of options considering
the bans are non-traditional, maybe with the exception of that Kalista. So where do they go? What are their options?
I'd like to see a Rek'Sai and maybe an Azir pick up here. I feel like Azir is one of the strongest mid laners right now. There are other options available, but I feel like he can play into any matchup. Rek'Sai is probably slightly stronger than Gragas. However, Shook last week, he opted for the Rengar when I think other options were available. So let's see what they end up choosing.
So for the time being, in Morgana and Maokai.
Ooh.
We did see Maokai played a little bit over in LCK. Not had the best winning record here in Europe, but still very hotly contested by the bottom of the table teams. And it's not one that you're a massive fan of. 5 wins, 11 losses coming into this week.
He just hasn't shown much results over in Europe. Yes, LCK still plays them. They obviously play their lane swaps a little different, where they actually still try to let that Maokai farm up in the 1v2 and let him get tanky. Often we see either the meta in Europe where he gets really tanky in the 1v1 lane, but he doesn't have enough damage to deal with those with the enemy carries. Whereas if you play Maokai, you only have 2 threats on your team. If you're going to play into a very mobile Gambit gaming with Sivir, your 2 threats are just at risk of getting blown up immediately. So I want to see the Wolves use this Maokai to their benefit, but it seems outdated.
And talking about being a little bit outdated, Krepa, you feel quite strongly about how the Wolves have frozen lanes. One of the most prominent teams in Europe who still freeze lanes to get farm, often on Freeze himself.
But I think they've learned from that. They must have done their VOD reviews, and it's one champion you don't want to freeze against is Sivir because she makes that even worse, right? Where normally other people would leave the lane and group up, she facilitates that even more. And whereas we said Copenhagen Wolves stuck in the past with the Maokai a bit, Morgana top tier pick 2. Gambit is orienting towards that poke already, so they have the Jace poke. This means they need some magic damage over in the top lane because they're pretty heavy on AD right now. And they have the tanky Gragas to facilitate that. Now, we talked a lot about Janna. I wonder if Gosu doesn't strike me as a Janna player. So I wonder if Gambit Gaming is going to stick to fully meta or if they're going to have like a little, you know, Gambit-esque variant on that.
Well, I'm taking a look through Gosu's previously played champions. Lulu, if he was looking for disengage. Bard, if he wanted to go that route. Those are some he's played already. Or, obviously, the Janna, as you've touched on. Shook, going for the Lee Sin over the Rek'Sai.
Very low on damage. Copenhagen was very low on damage right now. Corki does okay in the early spike, but as we go later in the game, I feel like they need a lot of damage coming out of their last pick and somehow keep that alive. And the only mid laners that, do a lot of damage, Azir, I feel will be needed by the Wolves. Otherwise, I feel they'll just get run over.
A lot of magic damage if they go for that Azir plus Corki and magic poke.
Oh, don't do Sarah.
And it is their option. So for Gambit, they've got their mid laner and their AD carry. We know they want to run that poke and mobility type of team composition. If we're looking for AP damage, who do they go for from the top lane? The Cabochard has played.
I wouldn't mind the Rumble pick here. I think that could be all right. Fizz is a split push component. Now, later in the game, okay, Maokai can get beaten by that Fizz, I feel, with the percentile, or percent HP damage, rather. Because percentile is not a word, I've been told in this week's prep. So that's speaking Lando. But yeah, Fizz coming out, you're right on the money there, but it does seem that Gosu has picked up that Janna. So overall, we see more of a 4-man group composition where the Fizz is a split push component that wants to put pressure and allow a comeback mechanic if your poke falls behind. And offers a bit of a flank too. You know, can 4-1 push, Fizz peels off that lane and then comes in from the side and wants to flank. And then obviously Janna is going to buff that poke. You have the Boomerang from Sivir, you have the Jace Gate combo coming out. With addition to that, the Janna shield for extra AD bonus. So you have very potent poke, good rotations. Overall, decent composition definitely coming out of Gambit, and I feel the Wolves are just very outdated in theirs.
And the last time Cabochard played Fizz, he went ham, to be honest. 8-1 and 4 with 92% kill participation. I mean, he was hopping, skipping, and jumping everywhere. And we'll need to see if the Copenhagen Wolves can shut him down, because if Diamond Prox can lift that kill participation and roam around, could definitely get that Fizz rolling with the teleport smite.
Yeah, that has traditionally been the way to beat Gambit. Keep Cabochard down and then prevent the other lanes from actually coming back in the game. Copenhagen Wolves lock in the Varus, so they're also settling in for the poke. Said in the pregame, Varus and Jace both on the rise here. Corki in the bot lane to facilitate that magic damage, because where Gambit Gaming is very heavy on AD on both their pokes, Copenhagen Wolves mix it up. So I think this was one of the better fixes for their composition. They do have the tank for disengage and peel, so it will be hard for them, or it will be easy for them rather to protect their carries. However, I feel they might go a tad low on damage later in the game.
So, ticking time bomb for the Copenhagen Wolves. We'll find out how good Soren's poke is. and how coordinated the Wolves can be with 2 substitutions. Remember, Lenny and Je suis Cass in for Young Buck and Unlimited.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier to play as one of these range supports, I feel, earlier on the LCS stage. You have that Black Shield that you honestly have to time pretty well. So we'll see how many jitters there is for Je suis Cass there on the first game in the European LCS. But talking game plan, Gambit, they want to rush in and take one of the carries down. That's what they want to do. Kill the Varus, ideally. Just pile on him. Flank him, just wombo combo, kill him immediately, and then make the rest of the fight, 1 carry against 3, and hopefully try to win it that way.
Yeah, bring more damage to the fight, and as long as you take out your opponent's damage, you win the fight. So
Easy
for Gambit, they're 3-7. They're coming up against the 2-8 Copenhagen Wolves. You can see the team compositions on your screen in a moment. There's a lot of pressure. Gambit, they want to make playoffs. You heard Sean's the coach talking about performing when it matters. You guys at home, jump on Twitter. Let us know who do you think is going to win. Hashtag GMB win or hashtag CW win.
And the crowd is hyped. I like this. Good energy today.
Here we go. Flags are lit on the left-hand side of your screen. It's Gambit versus the Wolves. Gambit started their 3-game winning streak against the Wolves in week 3. And we'll see if Gambit can do the same in week 6.
The person I'm going to watch is Shook. I really feel he needs to break open this early game with his Lee Sin. Phenomenal Lee Sin player if he's in his element, if he can keep going. Just land those early engages and get those ganks off and start snowballing.
Soren for the time being. Going to spot this little invade. Ward secured by Forgiven. Keep his CS numbers looking healthy. Oh, we're in for a level 1 Crepo. And they're going in. Cabochon caught out and down. Shook with the first blood. Gambit totally misreading that situation.
Well, Copenhagen Wolves with good preparation. We've seen Gambit do this in previous games a lot. A lot of teams have been doing it. It seems like a very nice counter. I prefer this over fanning out and then getting no information at all anyways. And a good start for the Wolves. Let's see who picked up that first blood on Shook. And yeah, the last time they played, that was a brutally slow game, if I remember correctly, where the Copenhagen Wolves kind of retreated into their base. No initiative, no like foresight, and eventually Gambit slowly won. I believe that was Gambit's first win of the split too.
It was, week 3, day 1. Cabochon was running the top lane Gragas, in fact. This time around, a different type of carry. And what I remember distinctly about that game was how the top laners had gone down bottom, and Diamond was ganking against Young Buck's Rumble, was putting pressure in the lane to get Cabochon ahead. We'll see if Shook can help Lenny out, but the matchup is very, very different today.
Now, this is weird. It seems like Gambit is trying to match a predicted lane swap by Copenhagen Wolves here, because there is no reason to put your Fizz with Ignite in the jungle voluntarily. So a bit of a misread or a mental outplay from the Copenhagen Wolves. They start on their weak side with Shook. They do Gromp on Morgana Corki, which obviously makes it so that the lanes are going to push. We have early XP being soaked up by Lenny. Let's see how well Lenny fares in this 1v2 scenario. That might also be the strategy from Gambit. Say, okay, maybe on paper it's best for us to lane 2v2, 1v1. But let's just bully the new guy. Worked for Steve, or against Steve rather, in week 1.
Every time we do see substitutions on this stage, the more coordinated teams can punish the newer players.
Yeah, and the more vital players in these lane swap scenarios are the top laner and the support. Both new, but also both Belgian. So they should fare well.
On a local pride. We'll wait for the result before I start calling you out on how it works out. Lenny, maybe reading the situation and realizing there's some threat, he's instantly left that top lane.
Now in lane swaps, the resource you want to watch that unfortunately is not easily accessible on your screen is experience. Because you might get confused by the CS numbers, whereas they're close and all. But experience is really what you want to watch, and then lane control. The way these teams will manipulate these waves, how early they will get a tower, whether they bounce it back, and then once they do, who picks up that farm? That's where we're going to see the game plan for Gambit come out. I believe it'll be Cabochon, logically thinking.
So let's find out if Gambit agree with that logic, Crepo. We finally see Lenny show up in lane. He spent this entire time running down the map,
through the forest,
holding on to teleport. And we do see Diamond going to force Soren to use a very early Ghost as well. So Gambit should get the first tower, but it will be mirrored by Copenhagen Wolves in the not too distant future.
Yeah, interesting summoner spell here. Soren, Ghost Flash on the Varus. Oh, is that going to bounce? Yeah. We'll see that later. So both teams should bounce these waves, as I was interrupted there. And then cleanse, of course, on Betsy in the mid lane, because he doesn't want to get snared by that Varus ultimate. Bounce wave back. Cabashard picks up that farm. Gambit bases. They lose dragon control, but they're now in position to make the next move because Freeze hasn't based yet, Cass hasn't based yet, Lenny is still level 2. Cabashard is picking up a lot of farm right now. Let's see what Lenny does because he's thinking right now I'm helping my team, but he's slowly getting behind in terms of experience.
Level 2 on Lenny's, I was going to say Lenny's Youngbuck, but no, it's Lenny's Maokai. I saw Youngbuck playing Maokai so often. Cabashard, a small advantage. We do see those Dragon averages very low per game. Both teams usually get 1, but not a whole lot more.
Yeah, this is a difference when we watch matches of in LCK, for example. When that Maokai gets swapped on, they keep him in the lane to soak up the experience because they value his higher levels and more CS, more over the pressure on the map. Because they want to make sure that he stays tanky, because if you run a medium tanky Maokai into poke, he becomes very just useless almost. Here he is going to the bottom lane. Let's see if they can dive this with the Cabashard TP, because that's what people usually do. Cabashard's playing 1v2 and they're sending him down bottom. I feel a little early. I feel they didn't need to.
Then he's backed away. They should be able to secure this tower. Copenhagen Wolves pushing in the top lane. Coming into this game, Crepo, Gambit had only been in a lane swap in 2 of their 10 previous matches. And for the Copenhagen Wolves, not much better. 5-5, but in terms of gold...
Oh, look what they're doing. This is
2 of the lowest.
They're moving Cabashard to the bottom again and then facing as soon as they can to let that wave bounce again. And they want to make sure that he continuously is getting experience. I feel he could have picked up a wave on top, but he respected the Wolves enough, thinking that they would send 2 people with their bot lane top and the jungler and dive him as he has no flash. They want to play on the safer side of things. Gambit bases again. They're putting Forgiven behind. This is the opposite of what we saw in SK.
But what we do see is they're keeping Lenny down. And this is what you touched on in Picks and Bans, how successful Maokai teams get Maokai CS and experience. Take a look in the river. Junglers are coming in. There's the cleanse. Betsy throws the hammer down and Barrel comes in from Diamond Procs. There's a to the skies as well as that knockback, and nobody down yet. Diamond is going to play gutsy as Soren's got no mana. But a lot traded. Summoner's burned on the side of Gambit.
Yeah, Betsy tried to hold on to his cleanse for a bit, but then decided it was better to use it. Summoner's burn on either side. Soren still has his flash though. Gas showing up in the village. Hello. But not too much happening.
So let's quickly revisit that Maokai versus Fizz point. 27 CS to 10, level 5 to level 3. That's some of the experience you were talking about, Crepo. Gambit, despite hurting Forgiven a little, he's still staying even with Freeze and defended that top tower.
Yeah, so definitely a superior lane swap here from Gambit. Yes, the gold is only 500 difference, but it's on the right players, and especially in terms of experience. I'm just going to have a look on my screen right here. Lenny just turned level 4, and the wave is pushing back out. It's bouncing towards Cabashard. Cabashard is 5.3 already. This is a very big XP discrepancy. And once he hits level 6, with that Ignite, he might actually be able to kill Maokai. And if Maokai dies in a 1v1 scenario, then his utility is rendered void and useless almost. So good early game approach from Gambit, and we see the coaching from Chance stepping in. This is a more strategic Gambit. One could argue the most strategic Gambit early game I've seen so far in the entire split.
One small blunder on that invade, which the Wolves read well, but every decision after that in terms of towers and lanes working for Gambit.
I totally forgot that even happened, because I'm looking at the gold here. And I was thinking, why is Gambit not farther ahead? Because they're down a first blood. To be this far ahead while being down a first blood speaks even more in terms of Gambit.
Gambit doing very well. They're putting pressure on those outer ring of towers. And we need to see what do they do next. Jisuika with Shook in this middle lane. And they eat a Shock Blast because, of course, Betsy's got none of those summoners available.
Yeah, now they want to group. This is what Gambit wants to do. Once they hit level 6 on that Sivir, you want to group for objectives and for towers and just start poking down. Clear those waves and put the Wolves under pressure while having that split push component in Cabashard.
So let's find out whether or not Cabashard can get ahead. But I'm going to revisit this lane swap discussion, Crepo, because Gambit have been sitting in a position where they're making the initiative. They're pushing Copenhagen Wolves, but Copenhagen Wolves have not been particularly strong.
Engage on Betsy here again.
He's going to have the backup of Diamond Procs, but takes a lot of damage from Soren. So where do the Wolves go from here? Because their top lane is not tanky enough to really look for fights. And Cabashard seems to be keeping Lenny controlled.
I feel the Wolves have already made a crucial mistake that they're now trying to fix. But due to the nature of their composition, it's gonna be hard. They don't have the comeback mechanic here. They need, and on the hunt gets popped. Cabo goes in.
Chum the Waters connects. Lenny gets slowed. Boomerang's out. He's gonna go in for the attack before we see Shook jumping in and dashing out.
Yeah, when you play a poke composition. English is hard today. When you play a poke composition and you don't get to group up and poke, you obviously don't have too much left, especially if you don't have the damage threat in the top lane to put any pressure. Lenny is playing that tanky Maokai, but he got shut down in the early game, and we talked about this in the opening. Top tier teams are no longer picking Maokai in Europe, and are we seeing why in this game?
Gambit just seems to have shut down Lenny so efficiently. Forgiven and Pepper putting a lot of auto attacks onto the inner turret, but they don't have the most AD to work with. But look at Cabashot's farm.
Yeah, but look at that wave that's coming his way. He can actually freeze this wave if he wants to. Because Gambit is fine playing on low pressure because they have the wave clear from Betsy in the mid lane. Lenny is very slow at pushing and he's not the most adept tower pusher either. He's not the split push threat. He's just a tank with a teleport. Not even level 6 yet, so all the cards right now are in Gambit's hand. And Shook on that early game jungle Lee Sin, he got the first blood, but he didn't manage to do anything with it.
10 minutes into the game. 30 CS for Lenny's Maokai. Fnatic shut down H2K by focusing and lane swapping and keeping Odoamne down, and Gambit have done something relatively similar. We see Cabashot has grabbed the Sheen and the Phage, going to be working towards that Triforce, further emphasizing his split push threats.
Yeah, now the game has stabilized a little bit, and the Wolves, because Cabashot is getting all that experience in the top lane, Gambit are making a clear decision right here. They said, okay, we're going to yield that dragon. We don't want to fight. But in the meanwhile, we let Cabashot slowly push out that top lane. He could have pushed that way quicker. He's not freezing, but he's doing something in between, a slow push. Letting those minions go down ever so slightly, pick up the gold where he can. Make sure you get it all.
If the focus is on slow push, do Gambit want to try group from mid? Or what objective? What is the reasoning behind the slow push, or theoretical one at least?
I mean, the good thing about a slow push is that you can make it a fast push very quickly. This sounds kind of dumb in your head, but if you're freezing and then you suddenly get behind on the map, or face check, then you need to make a decision to alter that state of the game, and you can quickly do that if you're slow pushing and just quickly clean the rest of the minions. But if you have like 2 waves stacked up there, then you can't switch over to a quicker tempo as fast as you want. And meanwhile, this is enough to catapult Cabashot in the lead. Look at him right now, level 8 against level 6 on Lenny. Lenny's only 6.4, Cabo is 8.5, 2 full levels ahead. Whereas the Wolves traded that for a dragon, but I feel Gambit is gonna shut down the Wolves right now and is gonna say, no more dragons for you guys. We're gonna take control of the map. But I'd like to see them group more. I'd like to see Forgiven push out bottom right now.
Lenny has less CS than both junglers. Diamond is gonna show in the jungle against Shook, and you can see Cabashot still slowly pushing forward. A little bit of vision in the top half of the map, but teleport's available if they need to get out as well.
Yeah, and I keep talking about experience, and you guys don't see it on your screen, but Cass is almost level 5 right now. Pepper is well level 6, so he's ahead right now. Forgiven's level 7. The only person that's behind his respective lane opponent, which is Freeze, is level 8 right now, so experience advantage on the side of Gambit, and then I think it'll show in one of the next fights.
And after giving up first blood, Gambit also have the gold lead, even on towers, but like you said, Crepo, most likely going to challenge for the next dragons. Copenhagen Wolves have got a numbers advantage up top, but they've got to be very careful because down bottom, they're relying on Soren to wave clear against Forgiven and Gosu Pepper.
Yeah, that is the benefit of playing double poke, is you have a lot of wave clear. This is actually the reason why you definitely want to introduce that split push component, because like we have seen in the past, when you run double poke against double poke, it kind of becomes a snooze fest sometimes in the mid game, because neither side will get far enough behind to not be able to clear these minions, and then superior rotations will be needed, or flanks.
So Shook connects with the Sonic Wave. He's looking for Betsy, kicks Betsy backwards, but Betsy puts the hammer down onto Cos before we see Freeze forced to Valk away, and Forgiven sniped with the boomerang, turns his attention to Shook, and Shook gets dropped as well. Wolves start the fight, but Gambit end it. Cabashot's gonna freeze Corki, and Sora's the next to at least pick up a kill. 3 for 1.
3 for 1 for Gambit, but misplay by the Copenhagen Wolves. Shook with a beautiful engage, flying kick flash, but then Cass missing the binding. And that was enough to allow Betsy to escape, deal some damage. Then Pepper comes in, then Forgiven comes in because they have that on the hunt to quickly follow up. And this might be the nail in the coffin for this game. This was the one opening the Wolves had. Yeah, good reaction from Gambit. Watch that again.
Not going to use TP either.
So Betsy, gate is down. This is when you want to engage on a Jace all the time, once his gate is down. But look at the binding. That just goes a little wide. Chaos is forced to defensively black shield himself. Get the heal, but he still dies. Betsy's still alive, and watch Pepper. He saved enough mana for that Monsoon. Could argue whether it was needed or not, but secures the kill. He probably won't need it in the next 2 minutes. Cabo comes in. Trading 1 for 1 on a split pusher is fine, because the people you kill often are not the ones that are going to deal with you later. As long as you stay ahead of Lenny, your direct lane opponent, Cabo Shard is fine when taking kills.
And it catches, it costs Gambit a tower. The Wolves are now the ones grouped up. You can see Cabo Shard down in the bottom lane. He does have teleport available, but there's no minions left for the Wolves to continue that siege.
Yeah, now Cabo Shard again just wants to put that split push. Now, ideally, Gambit want to send somebody top, push out the lanes, then return to group, and put a bit of a flank pressure on Cabo Shard. Diamond, however, he wants cast.
Hold on to that explosive cask. These Copenhagen Wolves are in full retreat. The poke wars are on. Soren throws out a piercing arrow, and it's not going to be enough to defend the tower. So all outer towers down on both sides of the map. Cabo Shard's got a minion wave pushing up to this inner tower. Gambit seem to set their sights on it, as well as that blue buff for a steal.
Yeah, and this is why Janna is such a good pick as well. It facilitates the rotations. You can buff up that poke with the shield, get that extra AD, and then most importantly, if Shook tries to jump in, he has to combat Howling Gale and Monsoon for disengage. And it'll be incredibly hard for the Wolves to engage. They almost have to use their Black Shield on the Lee Sin, who then needs to get a good kick somehow that keeps everybody alive, to burst people down with only 2 damage threats, of which one of them scales quite horribly into the late game. Very tall task for the Copenhagen Wolves.
And is already behind Forgiven Siva by a sizable amount, 30 CS. Freeze is going to have that difficult time, as you mentioned. It does only equate to 600 gold.
He has a Triforce spike too, so right now Freeze is on his strongest position in the game, because Triforce doesn't scale well with other items compared to the likes of an Infinity Edge. So Freeze hit his power spike, but the Wolves, they can't use it.
And every time we look at Cabo Shard, he's got a very large minion wave to farm. 148 to 58.
Yeah, and minion wave manipulation is what you have to do in lane swaps. Because it's predictable, you always know how these minions are going to interact with each other. You always know how this wave is going to behave. Forgiven at the flash though, poke coming out, so he's finding out what it feels like to play poke, or against poke. Spell shield was not enough.
No, not this time. And you know, Lenny, we keep looking at it.
They want the 3rd dragon.
Currently level 8 to Cabo Shard's level 12. A 4-level deficit is really, really massive. There is that dragon spawned. Gambit have got teleport from Cabo Shard, and look, he's pushing top. So even if Wolves are going to secure this, there should be some tower damage from Cabo.
I don't like Gambit is giving this up. They should have grouped for this, in my opinion. Giving away a 3rd dragon for free, oh well, for free is arguable, but trading it for some top lane damage that you could get anyways. Not the biggest fan, but the Wolves, they hit their spike, they poke out, they force Forgiven's flash, they get that dragon. Remember, with the experience changes, if you're behind, you get more experience relatively, so it's easier for you to catch up. It's Gambit's turn to punish.
Easier to catch up, but when you're losing towers and gold, it's going to be much more difficult to defend. For Copenhagen Wolves, it's a matter of holding fast and digging deep once they get to these inhibitor turrets.
And we haven't talked too much about vision this game. It's been pretty limited. Cass has been running around doing his best, but it's been hard for the Wolves to get vision deeper across the river on Gambit's side, so they've been locked on their map. So I would like to see putting those double side stones from Gambit to use. I think that's something Gambit as a team still need to work on. Ghost Pepper and Diamond Fox need to work a little better together, get better vision. However, so far, it's been good this game. So they've been mostly in the right place at the right time. One could argue that Pepper shouldn't stick with Forgiven as much, but that is up to personal preference, honestly. Gambit with a fantastic early game are now 4,000 gold ahead, nearing the 20-minute mark.
So very impressed with Gambit's decision-making in this lane swap. Keeping in mind, Copenhagen Wolves do have substitutions and are still trying to honestly find their sea legs. But the challenge for Gambit is now to break through the inner turrets and the inhibitor turrets, and it has proven to be difficult in the past.
Yeah, but they seem to have a good grasp on how this game is supposed to be played, or a decent one at least. And it doesn't matter who they play, because Gambit, they need that victory. They're down all the way at the bottom. They're playing a direct competitor for relegation spots, for that auto-relegation. The Wolves, they need this win, because if they win, they're tied with Gambit. So far, Looks like our Russian comrades are not looking to let that happen.
Do not want to Demoy just yet.
No Demoy.
Not this time.
The unseen Demoy is the deadliest though. Speaking out of experience, once you count them out, you think you've won. You got a little trash talk.
It's great to hear from Sean's before the video, and actually some strong words from Gosu Pepper. Losing to the bottom table teams is unacceptable, and it is the right attitude to have when it is so contested. You look all the way up at Giants, who are 5-5 in that 4th place position. Gambit are 3-7. That is not a big difference at all, especially when you consider Giants have to play Fnatic this week. So if all things go as expected, there's going to be another loss on Giants' name unless something magical happens. So for a team like Gambit, it's not unthinkable to set your sights on playoffs and get all the practice possible in lane swaps and decision-making and closing out games.
Well, I do like the way they play this early game, and this manifests obviously in a Fizz that is getting pretty far ahead. Triforce has been reached earlier, Boot's been upgraded, there's Fab Scepter in there. If you look at items in the mid lane, this is what you'll see. Mana Immune slowly stacking up to the Muramane, then some armor penetration, and becomes even more valuable, that armor penetration, because you get extra AD from the Janna, whereas Kaz is a disengaged support. Yes, he can land bindings to facilitate your poke. He can black shield you against the engage, but Gambit's poke will always be slightly stronger. So I just want to put that emphasis on that Janna pick yet again. I think it was smart that Gambit went for it, because so far we've seen questionable support picks at times. You know, the double Taric from Gosu Pepper.
Yeah. Hey, it's a counter to Kalista. Worked 50% of the time. Lenny, on a more serious note, I just want to highlight, at 20 minutes he had 72 CS. It's actually the 2nd lowest of any top laner this split so far. And it was, I think, because of Gambit's decisions, Odoamne was #1, yeah. Correct.
So that was a horrible shutdown.
And Gambit have done not necessarily as dramatic, but they've kept Maokai. Maokai's only got a Righteous Glory, and that's not going to be enough tankiness against a Triforce Eye-Edge Brutalizer Man Immune. Here comes Forgiven.
Now luckily in these type of compositions, ooh, Fish goes wide, cast flashes.
Gonna continue to peel defensively. Gambit engaged, but they don't find anything. It looks like Shook may be able to get away, running the gauntlet, and there's no Chum the Waters for Cabot.
Now luckily for the Wolves, in these compositions, the priority of farm and the priority of experience is Maokai is still 3rd. You still want your both poke champions ahead. So that's what we saw right there. They can stand up and poke against each other, and whoever sidesteps more skill shots, like Kaz does right there, and then in return land some poke and still win these fights. However, in a brutal frontal head-to-head, Maokai only has that Righteous Glory to go in. So he's gonna die really quickly, so they need to make good engages.
Well, the one thing you did touch on, Kreppel, is flanking. And if Shook and Lenny can surprise Gambit, there is enough initiation and engage to secure a kill. But the trick is to get the vision and catch Gambit in a positional error.
The hard thing about flanking is, if you play against a Janna, she could always just hover around a carry, since she will always be safe from flanks. And then if you commit your jungler and your top laner to a flank, then your front line is exposed. Gosu Pepper. This is why we like to see people work together. Solo mission, I've yet to see Gosu tag team with Diamond Procs. Get that vision.
Interesting to see relatively early Ionian boots on that Janna.
I like it.
Not something you see all too often because of the Tailwind's passive. And I think the movement speed helped dodge. 2nd time movement speed has kept Gosu alive.
Yeah, definitely so. But to touch on those Ionian boots, I feel mobility on Janna is overkill. Look at that poke. Let's just let that rest for a bit. That's what this game's all about. But yeah, Ionian boots, CDR, much more valuable stat. Because Janna has so much innate movement speed already. It's a little overkill to go Mobies, because if you're on 21 utility, then you drop down so much movement speed in the fight, whereas she's quick enough outside the fights anyways, so you want to have some in-fight mobility to dodge these pokes repetitively. Save your defensive tools to help out your teammates.
So Dragon #1 picked up here for Gambit, uncontested from the Wolves. Gambit significantly stronger with that 5k gold lead. And we hear on the hunt, Forgiven and the rest of Gambit looking for somebody. Kaz is going to get chomped by the Chum the Waters, and we do see Chain of Corruption spreading across Gambit. Cabot shots found Soren and Freeze, held on to the explosive cast. Diamond Prox is going to drop the barrel down, and with that they might set their sights on Baron. One of the big poke components is down from the Copenhagen Wolves. Gambit with some easy kills may try pick up an easy Baron.
Watch Gosu Pepper. He has to play ping pong with Shook right now. Shook's want to dash in, With the Q, with the W, Ghost Pepper wants to reset with the ulti, but he's a little close to the wall.
It's going to reset.
Ping pong.
Back up. There's a flash available for Shook. He may hop over the wall. This might be 50-50, but Betsy's jumped in. He's going to be throwing the hammer around, and everybody's peeled from Baron. Copenhagen Wolves have managed to stay alive, and the kill gets secured with the Dragon's Rage. Gosu's down and no Baron secured.
Yeah, Ghost Pepper had the right idea there in the Baron pit. However, he stuck to the wall too early. You have to go near that wall around the 2k point, because otherwise they will just simply kill you before you can finally get that reset on that smite. And honestly, good calm play by Shook. He waited, he recognized, okay, Pepper's going too low, I can force his ulti, go back out, then still have the threat of a W dash over that smite. Gambit said, okay, we're not losing this Baron. He's gonna peel off the Baron, try and fight, but less hesitation on the Wolves' side.
Didn't commit to that 50-50 Baron. Gambit slightly better when it comes to the Baron statistics.
And you never want to commit to a 50-50 when you're running poke, because Baron is so good against poke and so good with poke. Because if you're playing poke and the enemy has Baron, you can no longer clear that minion wave in 1 or 2 shots. So Baron keys get buffed. If you're playing poke with another split push component, it is so hard for the enemy to defend, because it takes them so long to clear those minions, which they clear in a very obvious, predictable manner, that it gets so easy for you to land your skill shots. So we always see poke versus poke come out very slow. We see Shook here take a ward down, because there's so much wave clear on either side, right? So definitely the objectives is where you want to play poke compositions around. You want to bait them into the dragon, force them to eat those skill shots as they walk in. And yeah, you want to get that Baron buff.
For Gambit, they do have that additional tool of the split pushing threat from Fizz. No teleport for a few seconds, but at the moment it's just Soren and Betsy trading skill shots back and forth. Piercing Arrow versus that accelerated shock blast, and both of them, Last Whisper and Brutalizer, both of them hitting real hard.
Yeah, Betsy can almost 2-shot Soren right now if he gets the right Janna shields. Right box, quarter.
I feel like you could say the same, that Soren could 2-shot Gosu if he finds it.
Yeah, playing support into poke is the most frustrating thing ever, because people tell you to ward. It's like, yeah, go ward. Yeah, go play some wards. I know it's dark, but you know, dodge the skill shots.
Sounds like a personal problem.
Yeah.
Make it work, Crepo. Make it work. But this is that split push threat that we have highlighted. A little riskier because there's not a lot of vision.
Yeah, he needs to ward up now. And now he wants to draw 1 or 2 members to the bottom, because all the experience with the Cabochard, they want to make it so that the Wolves cannot deal with him 1v1. And once more than one person shows, then they can go to the other side, go to the Baron, which they're doing right now. But
276 CS on Cabochard, 2 wards in the pit.
Yeah, Gambit.
3 wards in the pit.
You got to set up your plays a little more in advance now. You need to use this first window of opportunity to get deep vision in the jungle. Then you need to repeat the same cycle, then start the Baron. Gambit getting a little ahead of themselves. However, Cabo is still stronger than anybody 1v1, and it's 4 members of the Wolves right here. Luckily,
nobody's shown yet, so I don't know if Gambit are fully aware.
Oh, he's starting the oh, poor Gosu.
Gosu's been munched on by Baron, forced to use it very early.
They want to burn it down.
Monsoon, it's being focused, 3,000. I think the Wolves will be too late to this party, and they are. Baron secured after 2 or 3 attempts. Baron plus poke, now Gambit have the opening they want.
A little funny how that started. You're the support and you're like, okay guys, I'll help you reward, and then somebody just hits the Baron, you lose half your HP. But they knew they were going to burn it down. It's no longer 50-50 as nobody's around to steal it. Good reaction by Gambit, and this all goes back to Cabochard, who's a big split push component, which goes back all the way to level 1, where Forgiven was sacrificing his farm for his top laner. Gambit as a whole played more strategic with a bigger goal in mind. Their top laner was their #1 priority. Copenhagen was top laner was their #3 priority in this game, and it showed.
And it's very rare that you actually get to see a game where it's that clearly separated and that easily demonstrated. I mean, when you look at the percentage team damage that Cabochard is responsible for, he's actually only 3rd highest for top laners in the league. But this particular game is going to be significantly more thanks to all of the farm. Early GA as well, so Cabo really wants to keep those side lanes under pressure.
Now you can never judge the pressure though. Percentage damage is such a tricky stats. Diamond box, dodges that binding. So saying percentage damage is such a tricky stats because you're playing with poke. Poke is a lot of repetitive damage to champions, so while Cabochard may be lower on that, the pressure he puts out and he exerts on one lane facilitates opening up the map so much more for Gambit Gaming. So while the numbers may not show it, he's definitely forced to be reckoned with this game.
And there's again another good example of how effective Baron empowered minions are. And how difficult it is to clear out. Gambit have grouped up in this middle lane.
Here we go for the tower.
Now it's now being focused on the hunters available for Forgiven, as is everything else for Gambit with the exception of teleport. Lenny is up top trying to defend against Cabochard, but Copenhagen, they give up that objective. They simply cannot fight for it.
Yeah, and if I recall correctly, towers have been changed this patch as well. They're no longer slow or do the damage reduction, so Cabo has an easier time split pushing if he so wants to. He joins his team in the middle. Look at the damage.
Monsoon being used here from Eddie. Gosu Pepper rather. Chum the Waters connects and cast. He's going to taste something fishy as the barrel comes down. Cabo takes him out. Gambit crack open the base with a kill, a tower, and an inhibitor.
Gambit Gaming taking control of this game after the Baron, just like we predicted. Such a crucial objective here for Forgiven. One could argue that the choice of pathing was suboptimal for Gambit. They just want that other tower. Look at the shields. They're keeping Betsy alive, and you can put up that hypercharge.
Crepo, shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. That's what Gambit were applying to in that scenario. Take a lot of damage for it, but they do get the tower. Lenny looking for an engage. The barrel goes a little wide, and it's not needed as Lenny cannot find that point and click route.
Look at those improved recalls. 4 seconds back to base. 2 inhib towers down, 1 inhibitor down. Dragon is live. Don't want to lose that. Copenhagen Wolves are definitely going to go for a Desperation Dragon here.
I'd like to highlight once again, level 12 on Lenny's Maokai versus level 17. Cabochard's Fizz. It's all been snowballing from that early game and the decision making from Gambit.
Yeah, let's see how badly Gambit want to stop this Dragon here.
Very badly. Cast gets caught once more. He's going to get focused up by Cabochard. Diamond secures the Dragon as Betsy will actually land the kill secure hit.
Betsy says it's hammer time. Comes in, cleans up Shook.
Caught between a rock and a hard place. He finds Betsy with great damage. Lenny, however, is the cost. Gambit 2 for 1. They get Dragon, and that was a defensive flash from Freeze. Gambit now want to siege the bottom tower.
Yeah, and it's looking so grim for the Wolves. No more win conditions, no more comeback mechanics. Gambit in full control of this game.
Only Shook managed to pick up a kill. Looking flashy in the process. Right, Gambit now grouped up. They do have all of their members. It's versus 4 and not the main tank, although Lenny's not particularly tanky. Gambit's going to use that playful trickster defensively. And with the inhibitor taken down at 31.5 minutes, Gambit have absolute map.
Yep. With every push, you add another letter in that Domoy that they're slowly spelling out during the course of this game. If you don't know what Domoy is, that was the catchphrase in Season 2 for Moscow 5. Roughly means go home.
Distinctly remember it used quite frequently against you, Crepo.
Yep. They tried.
In the old days.
The good old days. The good old days. Where the game was a lot simpler back then. Lane, 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 team fight. Stall out the game.
Bomb for 40 minutes and then decide to play.
It was beautiful.
Beauty is subjective, I find. But what is beautiful is Gambit's growth this split. I think from when the team started in week 1, they were quite open and quite vocal about some of the difficulties preparing. And one of the things that I think we keep repeating is how we all thought, will the team adjust to Forgiven? Actually, it's Forgiven that's adjusted to the team in his champion picks, in his play style. I think we've seen more growth from Forgiven this split than we'd seen last year and this year from when we've seen Forgiven play.
However, he was so incredibly good at his style, though.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like Forgiven didn't warrant any... He didn't need to grow all that much until the SK strategy got kind of exposed. But yeah, definitely nice to see some adaptation here. Willingness to play different roles within the team environment. Also, props to Chance for stepping up to the plate. I mean, coming into a winning team, it's easy to start as a coach, but almost train wreck that was Gambit week 1. Compared to like right now, it's such a vast improvement, and this is not only obviously Chance, it's all the members working hard.
Yeah, the game plan was quite clearly decided going into the matchup.
Yeah,
and it was near flawlessly executed. Massive damage onto I Am Cheese, just cast, of course, and that should be enough to open up another inhibitor. Chain of Corruption goes up, but that's going to do absolutely nothing.
Yeah, we're going to see some wine with that cheese. Copenhagen Wolves pressured, and they're going to be crying because there's so little you can do at this point in the game.
Tiamat picked up for Cabochard as well.
Interesting.
Why not? Go all in. As what he's been doing every single time. Cabo left uncontested. Look at this, Nexus turret's dropping. Copenhagen was forced to respond, and Cabo's going to get this tower. Betsy is sitting down in that middle lane, pushing on the bottom rather, and Lenny's forced to use the twisted advance. We do see a kill picked up for Forgiven as the rest of Gambit focus on the Nexus turrets. They set their sights on the Nexus, and Gambit absolutely destroy the Copenhagen Wolves.
Cabochard quickly learns that your Guardian Angel doesn't pop when you get kicked into the fountain, so he actually ends up dead, and Gambit playing for KDA right here. Some target practice for the next game tomorrow, but the Nexus goes down. Gambit, 4 wins.
A well-executed game. From lane swap to rotations to pressure, it's very hard to fault Gambit's decision-making and plan.
Yep, I think it was a good plan. I mean, there's always room for better execution, but relative to the place in the standings where they were, relative to how important this match was for them, fantastic performance by Gambit. And the Wolves, a little early to judge their new team, but yeah, it's so hard. Coming into the LCS, 2 new players, put in a lane swap, where top lane and support are the most crucial parts to make that whole thing work. And yeah, they both fell behind. Good resource management from Gambit. Copenhagen Wolves thought they were trading evenly because they always got a dragon for something, but
just wasn't enough.
Wasn't enough.
And you know, I think we have to talk a little bit more about this lane swap, because for Gambit, they've not been in lane swaps. 8 out of their 10 previous games had not been a 1v2 or 2v1 or 4v0 scenario. They stuck to those standard lanes very, very frequently. And they were not particularly great. They weren't particularly terrible. But this is very good, again, decision-making from this, dare I say, up-and-coming middle-of-the-table team.
Yeah, this week will decide a lot. A lot of these lower-placed teams are fighting each other, or like very high-level teams. So a lot of these matchups coming in here, where people can go up and down in rankings. Of course, Sean's is like, good job, buddy. You carried that game.
Yeah.
But don't dive into the fountain with the Guardian Angel. It doesn't work.
And I've got to tell you, we did just catch a quick glimpse there of Cabochard and Sean's. At the end of the game, that was the largest CS lead we've seen out of any top laner. It was just shy of 200 CS.
Yeah, 336 for Cabochard.
In a 34-minute game.
Which is, 10 CS a minute. Nice. Roughly. And then Lenny, 138 CS. And it's his glory. No other item finished building the Banshees.
And it's not something we can truly, call Lenny out for, because this was Gambit shutting him down.
Yeah.
There's very little you can do on a Maokai when consistently in the first 10 minutes you find people in your face. You find people in your jungle on your half of the map. It's like, well, what am I going to do?
I mean, it's just the draft that Copenhagen Wolves came out with. They have flaws in that, in my opinion, or the flaws that can be exploited. Let's put it that way. Gambit exploited them, and they chose to opt for those dragons repetitively. And as every team out there knows, if you put a lot of resources on one side of the map, then obviously you're going to lose experience in those other sides. It was a little scary at a point where they hit the 3rd dragon, not for free, but uncontested. It's a good way to put that. But eventually, Cabochard experience discrepancy was just too large. In addition to that, he scales with damage, which is always nice to scale into the late game.
And this is something that we've seen from other teams and how they shut down Gambit, is by focusing Cabochard. By putting threats, by putting stronger champions and keeping him down. Because you see, when you unleash Cabochard, what he can do to a game. And we need to see if other teams can learn how to play around that.
Now, praise to Gambit. They did well. They had a strategy. However, it was against the weakest team in the league. Can they put this repeat performance, and will they show flexibility in their shot calling? Because they had a plan at the start of the game. They executed it well, but it wasn't contested. Nobody fought against them, and here we see the team comp pick order as well, and it was very obvious once that Jace was locked in that Janna was a close second coming out for the support. Cass, obviously, first rotation Morgana might be more of a comfort pick. As the meta shifting, Janna is also a recent shift, right? Only last week. These newer players coming in from solo queue, usually meta shifts first in pro play, then towards solo queue. They might not play too much Janna, so very crucial pick.
And it's interesting to see the Copenhagen Wolves, because they've got flavors of meta at the moment, with that Varus, with that Corki to an extent, maybe. But then the old school picks of the Lee Sin and the Maokai, something that we're not seeing a whole lot, considering Rek'Sai was up and available. You talked about the meta at the top of the day, putting damage threats in your top lane, or going full disengage for your peel, etc., for your poke. It's just interesting, because you don't tend to see a sort of half modern, half old school.
Yeah, it doesn't really match all that well. I feel if you're going to differentiate from your jungle pick, you have to make it work. I mean, Lee Sin could have worked. Imagine if Shook went 5-0. If he went 5-0 this game, we'd be talking about how phenomenal he was, but just didn't work out. Another jungle I want to look at is if people starting to start running more Olaf against Poke, just run him down, you know. Press R and kill him.
Well, it worked for Fnatic last week. I'll see if they run it this week. To take a closer look at Gambit's win over the new Copenhagen Wolves, let's head over to the analyst desk.
Thank you very much, guys. We were joined here by Betsy and Forgiven after that win for Gambit. 4 wins on the board for you guys. Congratulations. Great job.
Thank you.
I just want to get straight down into this game, to be honest. It was a very quick win for you guys. Betsy, I want to quickly talk to you. We're seeing Poke back in the meta. What's your thoughts on the Jace-Varus matchup that you just played?
The matchup is not that, like, it's not much happening in the matchup. It's just like farm, and then whoever does the most in late game wins pretty much.
Okay. What is your thoughts in general on the meta shifting to the Poke meta? You have a lot of Azir under your belt, which you do very well with. How does this fit you?
It's better than like Ziggs and Seraph meta, where you like just farm pretty much. But I rather play Assassin meta. It's more like you can do much more plays.
Yeah, but you have been making a lot of plays on the Poke champion here in Jace as well. Maybe transitioning to Forgiven, talking about people playing the meta and different champions. Of course, a big thing this split has been you picking up some new champions like the Sivir. I'd love to know how that came about, where it came from. Did you have a lot of say in that, or?
Well, since the Cinderhawk meta, I have been nerfed. And I think the AD carry role is all about sitting towers, being an utility player. You just fill in the game. You're just actually doing that. You have no possible influence in the game until 35 minutes or something, and I just have to adjust. And like the style that I had the previous season, like solo carrying or like being a major threat in my team, doesn't work out anymore. And as a professional player, you always have to adapt in general. So if I want my team to succeed, I'm doing that, pretty much.
Well, it definitely looks like you guys are adapting in these wins, and even in some losses. The Fnatic game comes to mind, where you guys had a fantastic early game, actually. How do you think your skill is reflected in the standings, knowing that you have those games in you, like versus Fnatic, both of you?
You answer.
Can you tell me again?
Yeah, how do you think your skill is reflected in the standings, knowing that sometimes you do very, very well, and sometimes you have the worst games?
We're still working really hard. Since Chance came in, we like improved a lot, and we're still improving. So hopefully we will be more consistent and do the same performances against Fnatic and other teams.
Forgiven.
Well, I had some really unfortunate experiences the last 2 splits, and like going almost undefeated in the last season. And I think as long as we make playoffs, if we make it, and if we display, like just in general, a lot of ifs in what I say, I think we can succeed in general. And I think our coach is doing a really good work. I think all 5 of us are actually really trying in general. I mean, from every single aspect. Like I live with a team, and so does everyone else. And so I see like the effort that Betsy or Cabos or whoever puts out. That's why we get resources also. Like I give creeps to them too. So I trust them. I trust them blindly. So whatever happens, I know that if we go down as 5. We will not go down as 1+1+1.
Yeah, that's fantastic to hear. It does seem like you guys are feeling very well with each other in the team. Congratulations. That's 4 wins for Gambit so far. And in just a few minutes, Roccat will look to keep the momentum of their last few games going against SK as they make a play for the postseason. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
You say something like you talk on walkie-talkie.
No.
Do you hear me? Over.
Connects with the Sonic Wave. He's looking for Betsy. Kicks Betsy backwards. But Betsy puts the hammer down onto Cars. He may hop over the wall. This might be 50-50, but Betsy's jumped in. He's going to be throwing the hammer around, and everybody's peeled from Baron. Goes to Pepper rather. Chum the Waters connects, and Cars, he's going to taste something fishy as the barrel comes down.
Gambit, 4 wins.